This podcast is being brought to you by LegalYogi.com, providing hundreds of free legal consultations every day since 1999. Our database contains over 160,000 legal and financial professionals, and our phone line is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If you would like a free legal consultation, you can call 1-800-397-1755 from any state in the U.S., and we'll be happy to provide you with a free legal consultation. Our web address and phone number are on the podcast image for your convenience, or you can simply go to LegalYogi.com. That is legal-yogi.com.
In today's discussion, we will be talking about divorce help for men, child support, and the rights and responsibilities for custody. My name is Chrissy O'Connor, and I'm here with attorney Jennifer Milne of South Florida Legal Rescue out of Palm Beach County. Jennifer graduated from the University of Hawaii at Manoa, William S. Richardson School of Law. Her internship was with the Domestic Violence Clearinghouse, which is a state agency in Honolulu, Hawaii. From 2001 to 2005, she headed up the Ethics Committee under the Vice Chancellor for Research for the University of California, Irvine. Being licensed in both Florida and Hawaii, Jennifer Milne is a member of the Marital and Family Law section of the Florida Bar Association, as well as a member of the Hawaii Bar Association. She has now opened her own private practice in Palm Beach County, Florida, focusing on fathers' rights in child custody and divorce help for men. Jennifer, hello. Thank you for being here.
I'm so happy you invited me, Christy. How are you today?
Oh, good. We're going to have a little discussion today. I wanted to ask you, first off, as a West Palm Beach, Florida attorney, what is the most common question dads in your area are asking about child custody?
I get a lot of questions about access to your child, about visitation, and whether or not it is tied to payment of child support, actually. And there's a lot of dads, the economy is really, really tough right now, and there's a lot of dads who have child support payments that they're obligated to pay, and they just can't find jobs. It's not that, they're the proverbial deadbeat dad. They're good dads. It's just the economy is really tough out there. So I get a lot of questions about child support modification.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, is there a difference between time sharing and custody? I guess there's different legal terms.
Well, some states use the term custody, and for Florida, where I practice, they use the term time sharing. And Florida moved away from the term custody because it encompassed other terms like visitation and, custodial parent. And Florida really wanted to emphasize that it's a shared responsibility, that one parent isn't visiting their child, which, when you really think about it, is a horrible way to put a child's relationship with their parent. So some states still use the word custody, but in Florida and a few other states, it's part of the shared parenting paradigm, and the term time sharing is used instead.
So they play a larger, more equal role in the child's life.
Well, yeah, and Florida is one of the really good states about recognizing the rights of dads and the rights of moms, because in a lot of states, there isn't a presumption of a 50-50 timeshare split. In Florida, there is that presumption of the 50-50 timeshare split, and if one of the parents is looking to significantly, deviate from that, they're going to have to prove that the other parent is unfit.
And what did you call it, a 50-50?
That is really different from other states.
I was going to ask, no, I'm sorry, I was going to ask you, what they call it, a 50-50 time sharing, and I didn't hear that last part.
No, they just call it time sharing, but it's a rebuttable presumption that the parents should split the time sharing pretty equally, that it shouldn't be, a standard visitation where it's every other weekend and a Wednesday, which is, this used to be the standard, is still considered standard, but it's just the party who doesn't want to share the child 50-50 is going to have to show why. The burden's on them to show why the other parent is unfit and shouldn't be allowed to have a 50-50 timeshare.
And it seems, based on your previous comment, that it should not be connected to child support. If I don't have a job, I'm unable to pay my support payments, that does not mean that I should not be able to share time or be part of the parenting plan.
Absolutely. whether or not you can pay child support has nothing to do with your time sharing, your access to your child. I mean, it does come up in the same proceedings, and you should always pay your child support, but some people just can't. They don't have enough money to live at the end of the month. They're caught in a quandary. I mean, there are literally people out there who are tied into this enormous child support payment, and they may not make their rent, and so they're really stuck between a rock and a hard place, and they simply can't make the child support payment, and that's when you would have to go for, a downward modification on the child support. Because you shouldn't not see your child because you can't afford to keep your child. That is just not right.
Right, right. Do courts award custody based on gender preferences?
Well, states like Florida have really moved away from the gender preferences. There are some cultural biases that, you do come across, but things like, it used to be that there was something called the tender years doctrine, and it was the presumption that a child was in their younger years was better off with their mother. But, the roles of women have changed, as have the roles of men. And so most states have abandoned the tender years doctrine. I don't know of any states off the top of my head that still use it. There might be some, so don't quote me on that. But some states have moved to another standard called the best interest of the child standard. And they basically say, well, what's in the best interest of the child? Now, here in Florida, they don't do the best interest of the child standard. They do the presumption of the 50-50 split. And that's good, because in these states that do the best interest of the child standard, it's really, really hard because the judge has a lot of discretion in deciding what's good for the child and what's not. And even though it may not be in the findings, a judge could find, that it's not in the best interest of the child to be with their dad. They may go into it with cultural biases, and it's a more difficult situation. They're not supposed to do it, but, it's really, really hard to hold the judge's feet to the fire because the judges have such broad discretion.
Yeah, and I would imagine that, your judges tend to be a little bit more conservative, well, I guess, I don't want to sound biased myself, but I don't expect to see a 25-year-old judge. I expect to see someone that looks like a grandpa that may have more conservative values than maybe someone, maybe I'm sounding biased, but, to have the legislation there sounds like it's helpful rather than depending on the personality of your judge, whoever you may get for a judge.
I've only practiced in Palm Beach County, and I got to tell you, Florida, I got to tell you that, honestly, Florida's pretty good about the 50-50, but if you go somewhere where there are more traditional values and about women, and it's just, I'm not comfortable with that standard, with the best interest of the child standard, because it's a really hard standard for a man to overcome. It really is, and it's unfortunate, but I think states are going to move towards the 50-50 timeshare. I'm hoping. There's a lot of things that are kind of brewing across the country, and there's more awareness of fathers' rights and parental rights, fathers' rights. So I am hopeful that states will move towards a rebuttable presumption of a 50-50 timeshare.
Yeah, that actually, it seems more, it seems logical. Now,
Yeah.
if you're a dad and you're an unmarried father of a child, do you have to prove paternity?
In Florida, you do. In Florida, unless you actually have a determination of paternity, you basically don't have any rights. There are a couple ways that you can have that determination of paternity. A mother can stipulate to paternity. You can get a blood test, and no one ever does this actually. It's called a putative father registry, and if you know that the person you're with is pregnant and you guys aren't married, I highly recommend you go and you register with the putative father registry, because it gives you it gives notice that, hey, I think I'm the father of this child. And if you don't have, your rights established as a father, it can be really, really, really scary. I mean, I have one person right now who he wasn't aware that the woman he was seeing got pregnant, and she left, and then he was served with court papers. She was looking for child support. But in the meantime, he didn't know that she had given birth and was raising his daughter. And the mother, had neglected the child. The child ended up in the ER 3 times over the course of under 18 months for malnutrition. The child actually went into cardiac arrest because the mother wasn't feeding her. And when she filed for child support, DCF found out that, hey, there might be a dad in the picture, and they contacted him. And he called me, and I said, you've got to get those rights established because DCF might take the child away. And you need to have legal standing to say, hey, I'd like the child to come with me. So you don't want to be in a situation where suddenly it's a race against the clock, and, you hope that this woman doesn't do anything where DCF is going to take the child and put it in foster care.
Yeah, that sounds terrible. So now if you are aware of the child and you simply sign the birth certificate, is that enough?
No, you still have to file for paternity.
Okay.
You have to file for paternity or ask the person to stipulate to paternity, the mother of the child.
So that sounds like a really good tip for dads out there, is to prove paternity. Know that ahead of time.
Well, here's the thing. I have friends, and there are people I know who are not attorneys, and, you talk to them and say, yeah, I just had a baby with my girlfriend. Or my grandson just had a baby with his girlfriend, and they're so in love. And I'll just sit there, and I'll say to them, I'll just say, okay, well, you should probably get a stipulation of paternity or an affidavit of paternity or something, And they always say, oh no, they're so in love.
Right.
And that is a huge, huge mistake. It is a huge mistake because when things go just a little bit sour, that's the time to say, hey, will you stipulate to paternity, or can we do ask the paternity?
Yeah, they tend to withhold that. Yeah, they don't want to give access to the child for a blood test, or they make it a lot more difficult because they feel like they're somehow hedging their bet somehow. So that does make a lot of sense. I wanted to talk.
I mean, even if you're in a really good relationship, do it while you guys are getting along. Do it while she'll get in the car with you and, go take care of this. Don't do it where you have to have the sheriff serve papers on her.
Right.
You don't want to do that.
Right. So I wanted to talk to you about some of the statistics of fatherless households, and maybe you could share some of that. I have here that 63% of youth suicides are from fatherless homes, and that's from the U.S. Department of Health. That's the 5 times.
These statistics are really, really sobering. When you have something, and it's called parental alienation, where one parent, and it tends to be the mother, but I have seen it from the father, where they take the child and it's brainwashing the child not to love the father, and the child becomes this pawn in this divorce or in this breakup, and it's so damaging to the child's psyche. And kids who go through this kind of alienation, they end up with things like depression, drug abuse, and at this really scary end of the spectrum, they end up, even ending up with suicide. So these custody battles can be super, super damaging, where dads are important. Dads need to be involved in their kids' lives. Dads need to be recognized as an important part of their children's lives. I mean, there are other statistics. I mean, 90% of all homeless and runaway children are from fatherless homes. That's 32 times the average. 85% of all children who show behavior disorders come from fatherless homes. And, I mean, it just gets really, really scary. 71% of all high school dropouts come from fatherless homes. Their self-esteem is so low. They say it takes a village to raise a child. It takes at least a mom and a dad. Absent exceptional circumstances, a child deserves to have both parents, because two parents that love a kid, it's way better than just one parent that loves the kid. Kids are a handful. You know, don't make your kid a pawn in your divorce or in your breakup, because they deserve better.
They deserve better, and it says here, actually I think you just mentioned this, that 85% of all children who show behavior disorders come from fatherless homes. So,
Yep.
you know, children with behavior disorders, they're crying out, and they need that balance. I'm a big
Right.
believer in that. If anything ever happened to my husband, if we broke up or anything, I would never in a million years keep him away from his son. It's whatever is going on between the parents should not, you know, this child should not face that. It's sad to know that people do that. I have a couple of questions that have come into the site. Hopefully you'd be willing to answer them. This is one visitor that came to our site. They left a message a couple of days ago from Altamont Springs, Florida. And here's the question. I'll just read it off to you. It says, I have had temporary custody for 4 years and have been paying back child support. I went to court last week to receive child support from the child's mother, and it was denied. So this seems a little bit unbalanced. He's got temporary custody for 4 years. That seems a little bit more than temporary.
Well, and
Oh, you're breaking up a little bit.
this is the father, I assume.
Yep, this is the father. Yep.
In.
Yep.
I mean, temporary custody is kind of one of those things where it is temporary, and then you can move to make a modification to make it permanent, or I'm not quite sure. I'd have to look at all the facts in the case. But when they did the temporary order for the time sharing, they typically tweak the child support as well to account for the extra time that the child will be spending with the father. So I'd have to look at his case, but I'm going to guess that maybe he went pro se. Maybe he self-represented himself. So maybe he didn't ask them to tweak the child support. I really don't know without more facts, though.
Yeah, because it makes sense that you need more facts, but it sounds to me that he has full custody of the child for 4 years, even though it's temporary that he's had full custody, even though they're calling it temporary, and paying back child support for something that he had owed. But now that he's had the child long term, he's seeking support from the mother, and it was denied. So he has.
I don't know why. I mean, that doesn't, to me, like, that doesn't make sense. Any child support that he had owed up until that point when he did the temporary order, he still owes. But they should have, if the kids were living with him full time, they should have modified the child support order. So I really don't know what's going on there. And if the kids are living with him full time now and he went in to modify the child support order, he should have gotten the modification.
Yeah,
because the money follows the children.
Yeah, so it makes sense that if he did represent himself, that he may want to call the 800 number for a consultation and speak with an attorney. I remember you saying in one of our previous conversations that a lot of times people do go to hearings without representation, and things like this do happen. So if you do want a free legal consultation, you can call 1-800-397-1755. That is the main attorney consultation line for the service. And Jennifer, it sounds like this is something that would be simple to you, but unfortunately this gentleman, if he had gone on his own, may have had a small thing that was overlooked that an attorney could have helped him with.
Yeah, I do help a lot of people who go out on their own who can't afford all of my services, so I do help them go out on their own and explain to them what they need to ask for. I help them with the paperwork, because it's real. I mean, when you have a child support order, your money is, I mean, typically a lot of times the money is tight, so they can't afford a full-fledged attorney, and so I offer what's called bundled services, where I don't go to court for you, but I sort of shadow you on what the finer points of the law are and what you have to do when you go to court, and I do your paperwork for you. Now, a lot of these people that come into me after going in by themselves and trying to navigate the legal system, it's a disaster.
So they cause more problems?
Oh my gosh, sometimes it's so hard. It's really about fixing everything that they did. And they're good people, you know, and they bring me their box, and it's literally this. I have two of them right now that I'm looking at. Two plastic bins, like the huge ones that you store wrapping paper in. You know, those really, really big,
just like a bucket of like
decorations.
scraps of paper and stuff, yeah.
And it's literally just papers in it that aren't organized. And you have to be so meticulous and so organized if you're going to do this by yourself. If you're going to do it by yourself, and you have to know the law. And I'll tell you right now, lawyers get the law wrong all the time. You know, I mean, I don't think I do, but, you know, I'm always surprised by, you know, sometimes I have to call attorneys on, you know, hey, this is the applicable law. And it's a lot of it's up for interpretation, yes,
right.
Right, but it's really hard for someone who is not a lawyer to navigate that system. And I'm not saying, I know that a lot of dads out there can't afford the $20,000 custody battle. And yeah, that's kind of the ballpark for it. But I mean, custody battles can range from, you know, several $1,000s upward. It can go on forever. And I do have clients where it has gone on for years. And I don't say that to scare people, but that is the reality. And most people cannot afford that.
Yeah, here's an example right here. Here's the second visitor that came to the site. Now this gentleman called our 800 number, so we'll just paraphrase the question because he didn't write in. He called in to the 800 number.
Okay.
So this man called. He lives in California, and the child lives in Arizona. The child's mother is refusing to let him see his child. It's been over 1 year since he last saw her. He attempted to contact a lawyer at Legal Aid in California, but was unable to obtain one who was willing to work with a case that is based out of Arizona. He said the situation is heartbreaking. He is on Social Security due to a medical issue and is unable to pay for a high-priced lawyer. So what would be your advice for this man?
It's horrible because the child has left the jurisdiction, and the father, unfortunately, lives in California. The home state for the child is now Arizona. From the fact pattern, it sounds like the home state is Arizona. He's going to have to get an attorney in Arizona. The mistake was letting the child leave California. And now he's just going to have to find an attorney who in Arizona to help. It's really, that's why if you have something like relocation where the mother or the father is attempting to relocate.
Oh, you're breaking up a little bit, Jennifer.
Sorry.
Yeah,
next amount of time. Can you hear me?
We're losing you.
Oof.
Are you moving? Let's see if we can get the connection back here. What were you saying? If you have an issue with a relocation,
if you have an issue with relocation, you have to be really timely about your response. You can't let the child leave the jurisdiction.
Can you get a court order to stop? Can you get a court order? Yeah, sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah, there's a little bit of problem with the line here. My apologies. Can you get a court order to stop the person from moving out of jurisdiction?
There's usually a hearing. They have to. Yeah, you can get a court order. You go to a hearing. It's called in Florida. It's a relocation hearing. And if you don't attend that hearing, your rights are waived. And so now the poor guy in California, he's going to have to get an attorney in Arizona.
I wonder now, would it be advisable if he could financially afford it to move to Arizona near his child?
I mean, that's a hard call. I don't know what the laws are in Arizona and California, but he probably, Arizona has jurisdiction to hear the case, the custody case. So if he were in Arizona and he is the established father, he could petition for visitation or time sharing, depending on what that state recognizes. It'll be easier.
It'll be easier for him. So it sounds like the advice is, first of all, don't let the child move out of state. Go to the hearing, attend the hearing, and do not waive your rights. That sounds like the number one tip.
Let's be really clear. I only know Florida law. I can't really advise on what to do in California.
Right.
So that is typically that's how Florida would operate, but you'd have to check the laws in your respective states to determine what to do. But that there is, generally laws regarding custody and travel and what happens when the child is taken out of state.
Right, and just so everyone knows that when you do call the 800 number for a free consultation, you're connected with an attorney that's licensed all the way down to your zip code. So this gentleman was forwarded on to somebody in California. So I just want to make sure that people know that if you call for legal advice, you're not going to reach an attorney in Florida if you're living in California. But that's an interesting situation. Basically, that's just about it for what we have for questions. I
wanted to say, because you brought up the paternity issue, that's also a big issue. Until you're declared the father of the child, the mother has the right to take the child out of state. The mother has the right to deny visitation. The mother has the right to make any sort of decisions for the child. They can move out of the country, and there's nothing the father can do. And that's why I say it's really, really important to establish paternity.
Okay, so are you saying that you have no rights until you can prove paternity?
In Florida, yes.
Wow.
That is the way it is in Florida. It's really scary, and I don't think, when the baby comes home and is wrapped up like a little burrito and you're still in love with the mom, it's something that you don't really think about. But I see it all the time. And it is devastating. They can leave with no forwarding address, and once they leave the state, you're going to have to find them. You're going to have to find them, and you're going to have to serve them. And even then, you might not have any rights over your child.
Wow.
If you can find them. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, so it's right now. There was something in the paperwork about the Department of Revenue proving paternity. How was that done?
The Department of Revenue, I believe, has attorneys, and you go and because child support, you can't have child support until paternity is determined.
Okay, so that would come in later then. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, no child support until the paternity is determined.
Okay,
no
and
time
then
sharing until paternity is determined.
Okay. Wow, that's the first step. Yeah, I had no idea.
It's serious stuff. You need to go and establish paternity. If you have a child out of wedlock, even if they're on the birth certificate, you need to go and establish paternity.
Yeah, it's very important. I mean, even if you're very much in love with that person, it's only a safety valve for the child. The child cannot protect itself. It needs protection from the parents. So it's very important. That sounds like the number one piece of advice today is to protect your rights, and it starts by determining paternity.
Right.
Well, I do want to thank you very much for your time today.
You're very welcome, Christy. Always a pleasure.
And that will conclude our show. Please check out our next segment that talks about the use of child support. We have a new tool, which is a child support calculator, and the division of child support. It is important that men understand that even if they cannot afford child support or are behind on their child support payments, that they still have the right to see their children and develop a visitation schedule.
This podcast was brought to you by LegalYogi.com, providing hundreds of free legal consultations every day since 1999. Our database contains over 160,000 legal and financial professionals, and our phone line is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If you would like a free legal consultation, you can call 1-800-397-1755 from any state in the U.S., and we'll be happy to provide you with a free legal consultation. Our web address and phone number are on the podcast image for your convenience, or you can simply go to legalyogi.com. That is legal-yogi.com.